Most investors follow trends. Very few develop edge. This show focuses on something different: how serious operators build durable wealth in overlooked niches, starting with mobile home parks. We'll break down the strategy, underwriting, discipline, talk about the roadblocks, and the operational execution that'll make your capital aligned with long term returns. This isn't about chasing deals. It's about thinking like an allocator and executing like an operator. This is the Mobile Home Park Exchange. I used to train real estate agents, and every class, I'd ask them why they wanted their license. And close to 60% would always tell me the same thing. They wanted to learn real estate because they wanted to invest. And if I look back, the reality is almost none of them ever did. And the reason is simple. I mean, an agent gets paid regardless of the outcome of the transaction. It's a riskless way to enter the real estate business and to get a paycheck. But our guest today walked away from the guaranteed outcome and he went into real estate investing, first as a wholesaler, and now he's involved with manufactured homes and land home packages. So we're going to trace the pivots of Chris Gavre. Am I pronouncing this right, Chris?
Gavre.
Gavre. All right. I mean, I am a New York Italian pronunciator, so if I
Hey, I hear all kinds of crazy things with my last name, so
that's
it's all good.
all right. And we're going to find out how you've been. I'd like to discuss how you've been using manufactured housing to address the affordability crisis we're having, in your region, in this country, and how you've built your land home business. And along the way, I want to see, I mean, for a guy who's 29 years old, how you've been able to do, to get to the position where you are today. So, Chris, man, thanks for joining us today on the Mobile Home Park Exchange podcast.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on here.
So, I got to start with this question, Chris. I mean, you were an agent, and yeah, the lore of being in the having a quote unquote real estate business without taking the risk keeps I think a lot of agents who come in with the idea of investing almost trapped, right? So what made you look at that model that you were in and saying, hey, I need to pivot to a different spot?
Yeah, it was a couple things. So just like you had said in the intro, I went and got my real estate license because I thought, hey, this will teach me about real estate. I can make some money doing it, and then I can go and invest in real estate. And what I quickly realized is, one, it doesn't really teach you anything about real estate, because what you and I do on the investment side is completely almost opposite of what retail agents do in their day-to-day job. And so I kind of learned that it doesn't teach me anything about real estate in terms of what I really want to do with real estate. But the first transaction I ever did, my mom's neighbor had this old mobile home, double wide. He wanted like 50 grand for it. And he's like, go find me a buyer. He didn't want to list it on the market, but he's like, just go find me a buyer. Long story short, found him a buyer. And this lady was also a real estate agent. Closed the deal. About a month later, she switched to the brokerage that I was at. I saw her in the office one day. I was like, hey, what'd you ever end up doing with that mobile home? And she's like, oh, I wholesaled it. I was like, what is that? And she basically told me what wholesaling was. She made 20 grand on the deal. I made like $900 after I paid Keller Williams and all of that. And I was like, man, I'm on the wrong side of this business. And that was probably 2 or 3 weeks after I'd gotten my license that I got that deal under contract. So it was very early on. And at that point, when I was talking to her a month later, I think I'd maybe done 1 or 2 other agent transactions, or at least had them under contract in the works. And I kind of also realized I don't really like being a realtor. I don't want to go show someone a house, and I don't want to sit in an open house. I don't really care to do all that. I just want to make some money and have rental properties and maybe flip a house or two. So long story short, she was like, hey, you should think about getting into wholesaling. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So I sat down with her. She basically taught me what prop stream was, taught me how to cold call and find deals. And her and I began to partner together. So I would cold call and go find the deal, get it under contract. And then she would do dispo and kind of help me with the numbers, because I had no idea what I was doing. And we did maybe 3 or 4 transactions together. That was back in 2021, very beginning of 2021, January, February. And we did several transactions together, proved the concept to me that wholesaling's real. And then we had different life circumstances and kind of parted ways. No bad blood or anything, just didn't work out. And then I went on to wholesale myself after that. But I can honestly say I don't miss being a realtor at all.
So, you know, and I think there's a couple of things there, and this is not to discount what realtors or agents do, right? Because you're right, being a real estate agent isn't being a real estate investor. I mean, they're two different, buckets of knowledge of what you need to do. But I think the advantage that it's given me, right, from the 25 years of being licensed, ultimately, Chris, I always looked at real estate. Real estate isn't about bricks and sticks. It's always about people. And I think that the agent is really the front line in interacting with the customer. So that, because whether it's a rental or a sale, I mean, it's really about the end user and what their experience is, and having that interaction. And I always felt like it gave me my ear to the ground a little bit better, getting inside of, what does the customer really want, and how can I improve that experience?
Yep, absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with that. There's just what I noticed was, it's all just traditional transactions. Go get them a lender and do a traditional 30-year mortgage, and and what I realize is that no investor is doing that. I mean, what the agent does on the day to day, an investor probably never does. I don't ever go to a traditional lender and get a mortgage for 30
Well,
years and you
but
know
but but that's where I think, and for the agents that are listening here, I think what where the disconnect could be, or is that they look at, there's, I don't want to say they're sold, but they believe that they have a real estate business. They don't realize that they're a sliver of the real estate business, and their sliver is just the transaction, right? And you could build a business just on the transaction, but it's not necessarily a real estate business per se, unless you use that as a base of where am I going to dig deeper, right? Like there's more than just a 30-year mortgage, as you just talked about. And I know you've used some creative financing, which I'd like to get into, but it's more than just the 30-year mortgage. There's different ways of getting a deal done. And if you're an investor, those normal ways that work for buying a house aren't going to be the path that you're going to take. But like, let's go. I mean, you're in 2021. The market at that point is, I mean, I don't care where it is. It's as crazy. It was on fire, right? Like there's tons of transactions,
yeah.
a lot of volume there, and now you're picking into to wholesaling, and you're on your own, and I mean, relatively young guy. Like, how are you finding deals? Like, what are you doing to, like, you have a network of people you're selling it to, like other investors you're working with? Like, how are you building your business from that, as an effective wholesaler?
Yeah, so at that time, I was just doing cold calling. So I would sit there on a dialer for 3 hours a day, and hey, you want to sell your property at 123 Main Street? That was my entire morning, 9 a.m. to noon. I made sure no matter what was happening that day, 9 a.m. to noon, I'm booked, so I can't do anything during those hours, and that's all I would do is cold call. As far as offloading the deals, I mean, at that time, as you kind of just mentioned, it was pretty easy because everyone wanted to flip a house. Then everything would sell almost. But the acquisitions was tough then, but the offloading was easy. So I would post them in Facebook groups. There's a Greenville, South Carolina real estate investor Facebook group. I would go post my deals in there, and then people would comment or reach out, and want to go see the house or land or whatever it was. And then through that process, I developed a list of maybe 5 or so people that were awesome buyers. I'd done a lot of transactions with them, and usually any deal I got, if one of those 5 people didn't want it, I probably wouldn't even get it under contract because that told me, hey, this isn't a good deal. And I wasn't the kind of wholesaler that's out there selling things for close to retail price. I mean, as I look back on it, the more I learned about real estate and I look back on the transaction that I did, I was like, man, I actually was kind of good at wholesale. I got some pretty good deals because a lot of what wholesalers put out just isn't a good deal these days. Um, so anyways, yeah, so I would just run it by those same 5 people. And then if worst case scenario, if I still contracted or I already had it under contract at that point, then I would throw it in the Facebook group. But I always hated to be the guy to go back to the seller and say, "Hey, I can't close on this," or "Hey, I need to talk you down 10 grand." Um, I usually tried to pre-sell it before I officially had it under contract.
Yeah, and so the wholesaling. I've done, and look, I feel like I've had the opportunity to touch on a lot of different things before I found my way into mobile home park investing, and I had done some wholesaling myself. And here was my challenge. Like early on, I did a couple of deals, and I got stung one time, right? So I had a deal in Staten Island, and I was selling the property next door, like listed, sold it, builder was buying it. The property that I wholesaled, I had acquired. It was a ranch, but the zoning allowed it to go to 8 units. Like you could build an 8 unit building. So I locked up that property with the intent of, hey, I know I had a 6 unit development next door. Now you get a 14 unit development there. So as I locked up that property, the developer who bought the 6 units, I now wholesaled him the 8 units. So now he can, in aggregate, he was building a bigger deal. But I didn't have the, like you just mentioned, that I didn't have the money. I didn't have the money to close at that time, right? I was very young, right? So, and the builder knew it. So when we got to the closing table, he wanted to, he squeezed me down, right? And then there was like a fence that was, on the adjoining property. And so he wouldn't close. So that fence was down because it was like 1 foot into the adjoining property. And I was so upset about being caught on what I thought my fee was supposed to be that I wasn't going to hire anybody to cut the fence. So I went there with a sawzall over the weekend, cut the fence. And in that, Chris, the I guess the real learning lesson in that, because I was so angry and adamant about not losing another dime and doing it myself, I didn't realize there was poison ivy all over the fence.
Oh
And I
man.
got the worst case of poison ivy from my legs all the way up to my torso, all the way up to my chest. And I swore to myself again, I was like, I'm never going to get into a situation where I get into contract with on a property where I don't have the ability to close. So even if I flip the property, like I knew that I was going to be able to close on that deal, and I wasn't going to get to the closing table and have somebody, whittle me down, right? Or put me in a position where I couldn't pivot. And like that was so powerful to me, right? That poison ivy was like the reminder. I mean, did you ever have a situation like that happen to you in your wholesaling career?
I've had it where people would come back, not like at the closing table or not like 2 days before or anything like that. But I mean, they would contract it, then a week or two later, kind of try to come back and renegotiate. I never had a bad situation like that, but that's also why I would just have, I'm calling it 5 people. I don't know how many it was. Maybe it was 10 of the people that I would just send the deal out to before I even talked to anyone else about it. Cause I knew those guys, I had a relationship with them. I knew they'd close and they wouldn't do that kind of stuff. I do know several guys in our market that's their strategy where they're going to wait until the night before closing. And to me, that's slimy. And it's just, I wouldn't want to work with people like that. So I can see why that was your takeaway there, but I can't say that I've had a situation like that happen to me.
No. But but from there, again, you make another pivot, right? Because even in the wholesaling, and again, you have a couple, I'm sure you had a couple of dollars at risk, but it's minimal exposure, right? Even if you had to put escrow down, right? It's
Right.
minimal exposure on that. But then you go into keeping the homes yourself, right? Because you're seeing, hey, somebody else, there's a bigger prize if you risk more capital, right? And you start doing some if you do some spec work or flipping, right? So now you decide to start flipping some of these homes, right?
So basically, when that lady and I were working together, her name was Maria. When Maria and I were working together, that was January, February 2021. In July of 2021, she had some guy that was teaching creative finance stuff that she knew, and she was like, "Hey, I think you should join this program with me. It's $500 a month, and we can learn about creative finance and see how we can work that into our deals." And so I was like, okay, sure. So I joined this program. The guy's name was Travis. And what Travis taught me absolutely changed my life. I'm not a huge sub two guy and stuff like that. I mean, I've done them, but he was more of someone that I could lean on when I would run any kind of deal by him, because he flipped a lot. He did a lot of sub two. He did wraps, everything. And so I would run just a flip deal by him or a sub two deal by him or whatever. And he gave me the confidence that I needed at that time to be able to do these deals. So I joined Travis's group with Maria. Shortly after that, Maria and I parted ways. And Travis taught me what hard money was. I had no idea what that was. And so while I was wholesaling and finding these deals, occasionally, I come across a house where I'm like, oh, this is in a pretty good location. I wouldn't mind just buying it, burring it is what I was doing at that time. Burr it, keep it, rent it, or wrap it and seller finance it, whatever. And then I would come across some where I was like, you know what, this is also a pretty good deal. Maybe I should flip this. So into 2021, into 2022, I had flipped a couple of houses at this point and was using hard money to get long-term rentals and burring some of these houses and kind of just fumbling through it. I mean, the essence of my business was still wholesaling at this point. But I would, when I found something that I liked and I wanted to keep, then I would, flip it or burr it.
So you're talking about like buy, renovate, uh, and then refinance, right? So for
Correct.
anybody listening that doesn't know what BRRRR is, right? That's buy, renovate, refinance, right? And then you're just adding it to the portfolio, adding doors. So you're looking at single family homes, you're building a portfolio along the way of single family rentals, right? And you're using hard money to buy it, right? So private lenders are giving you the capital, and then you're renovating, either keeping it and flipping, either flipping it or keeping it and renting it. Is that so? This
Correct.
is what you're building out on.
Yep, correct. At that time, yeah, that was the whole essence of it. And, I mean, I wasn't bankable, and so I had to go to the hard money lenders, and there was like Kiavi, and I mean, there's a bunch of them. But at that time, they also, and they still do, had 30-year loan options. They were a higher rate. They were 8% maybe back then. But a lot of these houses, I was doing what Travis taught me, is I was just wrapping the mortgage and selling it for 50 grand more than I had in it at 9.5% or 10%. And so I was still able to make a pretty good spread. So I was doing that for a while. And then in August of 2022, I guess it was really June of 2022, the licensing board in South Carolina changed their I'm going to call it a law, even though it wasn't a law. They changed their laws for realtors on wholesaling. So basically, the licensing board came out and said, if you're licensed, you can't wholesale, all this stuff. And so that was in June of 2022. I was still kind of doing wholesaling because I didn't really know about this. It was a brand new regulation, and I posted a deal in that Facebook group, and someone reported me. So August of 2022, I got the cease and desist letter from the licensing board of like, hey, you got to stop wholesaling. We're opening an investigation against you because of all this stuff. And I was like, man, this is serious. Like, I don't know what's going on. So immediately overnight, I stopped my wholesaling operation in August of 2022. At this point, I had bought one mobile home park, and I did quite a few mobile home deals, like flipping them or wholesaling them. And I had just bought this package of 22 mobile homes. It wasn't a park. It was just like a bunch of individual ones on their own land spread out. And there was this guy that I was competing for that deal. Like, I was calling the seller. I called the seller. I was like, hey, how much do you want for these? And it's like, 500 grand. And I'd be like, okay. And then I'd call him back, 3 days later. He'd be like, well, this other guy's willing to give me 530. It's like, okay, well, I'll do 550. And then he would go back to the other guy. Long story short, the other guy's name is Robert. And when I got that cease and desist order from the licensing board, I thought, well, you know what? I've got some mobile home parks and some mobile home experience. Maybe I'll just start wholesaling mobile home parks, because that regulation was just for single family homes. And so I started cold calling for mobile home parks. I got some under contract, and Robert, who is the guy that was bidding up that mobile home package that I was trying to buy, ended up becoming my partner. I tried to wholesale him a mobile home park. This was October of 2022, so a couple months after that. And because I knew he was buying mobile home parks, tried to sell in this park. I had like a $70,000 assignment fee on it, and he was like, I don't want to pay that much, but if you remove your assignment fee, I'll put up the money, and you can just be a 40% partner in this park. Thought, sure, why not? So we bought the park together. This was we closed in November 2022. and we officially partnered on this park. We're kind of talking about what kind of stuff we could do moving forward. I was still finding parks, and he's like, you know what, why don't we get into flipping houses? And so I fired up my marketing for houses. We started flipping houses together, and then we discovered in February 2023 that park that we bought, we had a couple empty lots, and we were flipping houses together at this point, maybe I don't know, 5 or 6 at this time. And we had some empty lots in our park, and he was telling me, he's like, man, I got this mobile home dealer's license. I can go directly to the manufacturing plant and get these houses, brand new houses at wholesale prices.
Before you get there, because I just want to hit on something that I'm hearing you talk now, right? I hear Maria, I hear Travis, I hear Robert, and one thing that what I'm getting out of this, and I mean, you seem to have like partners early on, right? Like either I don't want to say you latched on to people, but you were able to find people whether they were mentors or to kind of guide you along that process, right? Really, really early on, where I think, how do you think that accelerated your growth, or do you think that where do you think how do you think that played a role to do that? Because a lot of people look at this and they think about real estate investing. Yeah, they read a book or they listen to a podcast, but you could be off on your own island, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
how it sounds to me like you had a couple of good people along the way to help you out.
Yeah, I've always had a partner that I was working with that, as you put it, I did latch on to people because I knew that I was humble enough to know that I knew nothing. And so when Maria was sitting there talking to me about wholesaling, it's like, man, I have no idea what wholesaling is. Tell me about it. And it was a value exchange, as it always is, right? Because Maria was, in her late 40s at that time. And for her, she's like, well, I don't want to be out there, banging on the phone lines and trying to chase people around to get a deal. But a young guy like me, that's right up my alley. So, for her, she was able to get deals via me and not have to go do the grind of cold calling and all of that. And then that Travis guy, which Maria introduced me to, of course, I was paying him, but he was a massive part of my success as well. Because at that time, like I said, I knew that I didn't know anything. And so when I would get a deal under contract, I really just wanted someone to tell me it was a good deal and tell me I should go do it. And that's what Travis really did for me, was give me the confidence and push me to go do things that I was probably too afraid to do on my own. And then, yeah, same with Robert. It was funny how we met because we were competing for the same deal. And then, kind of came full circle with the other one. And Robert's been my partner ever since. I mean, we're going on 4 years now that him and I have been partners. And I don't think that without any one of those people that you and I would be sitting here having this conversation right now.
Chris, that means it's so powerful, because I know throughout my career, especially when you're young and you're coming up, you might not have the capital that people who are a little bit more well established are. But I had some guys who I worked with who were business owners, or who was a builder, or and they didn't have the time to do what was needed to do to find the opportunity. And I had the time, but not the capital, right? So I could give them my time, and I could go knock on doors, and I could make phone calls, and I could do all that work that they couldn't necessarily do. And then if I found the deal, then I could work my way into the opportunity, because I could, like you said, it through a value exchange of me putting in the work, being the boots on the ground, and then they could come in and kind of, you know, smooth out the surfaces and until I was ready to take that next step. And that's so huge. And I think so many people miss out on that when they're looking at investing. It's you're not on an island. It's really about, what do they say? Your network is your net worth, right? It's
All right.
who you can partner up with at that. So now you and Robert, I mean, you guys own a mobile home park, right? You have some vacant lots. He's a dealer, right? He mentions to you he's a dealer. You know what? What's the move from there? Like, what are you guys doing at that point?
Yeah, so this is January 2023 at this point. We had just closed on that park, had some empty lots. We had started flipping together. I think we had, 3, 4 going on or something like that. Not too many. And yeah, he was like, man, I got this dealer's license. I can go get us brand new homes. At the time, it was like a single wide was, I don't know, 35 grand or something with this dealer's license. And we can go fill up our park with that. And I was like, I don't know, that's kind of expensive. We can buy a used one off Facebook. But then I was like, wait a minute, what can you get a double wide for? And at that time, is I can get a new one for 55 grand. And I was like, holy shit, dude, you can get a brand new double wide for 55 grand. Why don't we just go buy, a half acre lot, order this brand new house, set it up, make it FHA compliant, detitle it, and sell it on the market instead of flipping houses. And I said, man, I never thought about that. That's kind of an interesting idea. And so one of my other wholesaling friends had these 5 lots, and it was in Gaffney, South Carolina, that he wanted to sell. They actually had mobile homes on them already, old ones that need to be torn down. And he sent me this deal, and I talked to Robert. I was like, hey, man, remember that idea of like doing the new double wides on land? Why don't we try it with these 5 lots? So we bought these 5 lots from this guy. And that was the first time that we had done land home packages. That was February 2023 when we closed on those lots. And man, we haven't looked back since. During that time of 2023, and I would say even 2024 as well, we were still flipping houses while doing these land home packages. But end of 2024, mid 2024, we completely left house flipping behind and only do land home packages ever since.
So now, that's great. I'd like to talk to you about the land home package because there's a couple of things and nuances about this. Now, are you doing, manufactured homes or are you doing modular, right? Slightly different.
We only do manufactured.
You only do manufactured. Okay.
Correct.
So now with that, to get the manufactured home, and here's one of the challenges, right? So we bring in manufactured homes to our communities. And for us, the biggest challenge we have because we run, we like to have tenant owned, communities where the tenants own the home. We're not running park owned homes. We're not doing a rental model. We're not looking to do long term rent to owns. We're looking to actually sell the homes to the end user. And the biggest challenge in the space when you're doing that is the financing, right? So for us, our resident, our occupant has to get chattel financing. The decline rate there is something like 64%, right? So it's a very high barrier. The rates are a little bit higher than they are on traditional mortgages. Do you have that same? I mean, you mentioned that you got to get it FHA compliant. Like, are you able to kind of skip that challenge and go through conventional financing with a manufactured home when you do this land home package?
Yeah, because we're selling them the land and the home. We're not keeping the lot. Because we're not doing this in a mobile home park. We're just doing it with, we'll get 5 acres and chop it up, subdivide it into different parcels or buy a half acre lot. And so when I say make it FHA compliant, we're detitling it, which means, as you know, mobile home comes with the title just like a car does, but you can retire that title at the county level. And what that means is they're going to come out there and do an inspection. If you block it and tie it down properly and permanently affix it to the land, then when you detitle it, that title goes away and it becomes a permanent fixture on that lot.
Yeah.
And once it's a permanent fixture, a buyer can go get a VA loan, USDA loan, FHA loan, conventional loan. It's just like a house in terms of, a little bit different, but a buyer can go buy that land and home from you, just like they can go buy a stick-built house using all the same different types of loans.
But there are some nuances, like when you talk, it's just how you block it, how you stay. You're not tying it down like you would in normal. You are affixing it to a permanent foundation.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so that's and when it comes to financing, like how are you finding? Is there, because we've looked at a development that we were doing, and there's still this stigma, right, about the manufactured home, right? Do you see that in that sale process, like where some buyers coming in and they still have the stigma of, hey, this is a manufactured home rather than a stick built? And how do you address that?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because let's see, today's Friday. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 days ago. We had one of ours that's listed. Buyer went through it, And we reached out to our agent maybe 2 days afterwards, like, hey, what'd that buyer think of it? And he's like, oh, they decided they don't want to buy a mobile home and they're going to just go for a stick built house. So, yes, there is still some of that stigma there. Absolutely. What helps is that when you get these houses and they're brand new, if you're standing inside some of them, you wouldn't even know you're in a mobile home. I mean, some of them really are nice. And everyone thinks of the old 1970s beater, rusted tin can mobile home that smells like, 6 packs of cigarettes were smoked in it and there's a hole in every wall. And that's not what these are. It really is a nice house. I think that stigma is always going to be there. But to be honest with you, that's kind of why I like this space, because people underestimate it. And a lot of people don't even want to do land home packages or mobile home parks because of the stigma that's attached to it, meaning investors. And I'm okay with that because it's just more opportunity for me.
Yeah, well,
On the resale side, there is some of that, but we don't have an issue selling these at all. On average, we're still going under contract within 1 to 2 weeks of listing, which I know for flippers is kind of unheard of right now.
so it, but is there, how does it work on the appraisal side of it, right? So, it's great. You got a home there, right? So you could bring in a double wide that's, 1,654 feet, right? 3 bedroom, 2 bath, beautiful home. And so we bring in some double wides, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, some of the construction of some of these homes, and I don't know who, not to say I know who you use, but whether it's a Cavco, a Clayton, I mean, these homes are beautiful. Like, you walk in and they're very nicely put together, and they're built in quality controlled factories, so that you can ensure a certain product quality that's getting there, and they all come with warranties. But when you get it down on the ground and you want to sell it at a price, you're getting a bank loan, you're still subject to the appraisal, right? How is the
Yep.
appraiser looking at? They have to compare against other manufactured homes on lots? Is that what, is that maybe one of the things that you have to look at?
Yeah, so we're going to comp based on used mobile home sales. If there's brand new ones that are comps, that's great. But there's not a ton of people doing this yet. So most of what we're comping against is used mobile homes that were either renovated or some that were just sold in an as-is condition. And at this point, I mean, we've been doing, heck, we've probably done almost 200 of these deals since 2023 at this point. So we know our market now to where it's like, oh, it's over in that area. We can probably get 230 for it. When we started, it was really tough because now we're able to use our own houses as our comps.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
but when we started, obviously we didn't have that. And back in February 2023, I didn't know a single person that was doing. I mean, I actually thought we came up with it. I thought I was a wizard. But I had not heard of a single person doing land home packages. And so we just kind of had to fumble through it at first. And what we've kind of learned is we'll use used mobile homes as comps if need be, only ones that are renovated, really. Now you got to be careful there because some people will renovate these things and it looks nicer than our brand new house. They'll go tile the shower and do granite everywhere in the kitchen, and so you kind of have to knock those down a peg if you're looking at those kind of mobile homes that were renovated, or just kind of a run of the mill renovation is usually what we're looking for to kind of comp it. And we don't attach any more value to it being a brand new home. Like, for example, I know spec builders. Typically a brand new construction house will sell a little bit more per foot than a flipped house. We don't attach any more value to ours because it's brand new. We just say, you know what, it'll sell faster because that's more desirable. But we don't have any sort of increase on our expected sales price because it's brand new.
Do you find when you're doing this, or if you're doing this in a market, and I know you're in a region where you've got some obviously knowledge, but each, I'm sure, submarket inside of that, it has its own animal. Do you find that because there's still a stigma with the manufactured home, right? A bit. Do you think that there has to be a delta between what you could sell that manufactured home for and maybe the traditional stick built house in that area for it to make sense? I mean, because dollar for dollar with somebody, with the consumer, regardless whether it's right or wrong, right? This is not judgment on what the consumer is doing. It's just a fact that the consumer will pay a little bit more for a traditional house, right? Like, do you find that there's a specific number that makes a difference? Like, it has to be $50,000 apart, $70,000 apart, or is it not so? Like,
No, that's absolutely correct. And usually I mention that, but this time I forgot to. Yes. So in our market, what we found, and Greenville is the best market. We're in the upstate South Carolina, and obviously there's several counties up there. Greenville being the best one. In Greenville, the highest that we've been able to sell one for is 240. What we've noticed is that when you start approaching 250, 260 sales price, you're getting close to stick built house territory. For perspective, you could go buy a track built Ryan Holmes brand new construction house for 325 in our market. It'll be more of a starter home, but when you start getting close to 300, 325, you can buy a stick built house. And to your point, what we've realized is that if you're trying to get 250 or over, at that point, those people would rather just go buy a stick built house. So typically we're selling for around 230, 225 is our average. Um, and we don't have a rule of thumb like we need to be X amount of dollars under a stick built house, but we are very conscious of that. And yeah, because the market we're serving is the most affordable form of housing, and we need to be as cheap as possible. And I know some guys in this space will go try to get the nicest mobile home and push for a higher sales price. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's completely anti what our purpose is here. You're doing mobile homes for affordable housing. You're not doing mobile homes to go get the nicest house and sell it for a premium, at least in my opinion.
yeah, yeah, that's a great point, Chris, because when we look at, we look at two different deal sets for us, right? So we can have a deal in a mobile home park that's 70%, 80% physically occupied, meaning homes on site, whether they're occupied with residents, and we could look at it one way, like we need the county and the city economic demographics to be in one bucket. But if we have to do infill, meaning we have to bring in new homes, we have to be able to sell new homes on site in a community, we know that in that area, for it to work best, we have to have a median sale price of a traditional home to be over $200,000 for us to sell our homes at a disc, for it to make sense or to attract the buyers and at the velocity we may need it. So knowing whatever those numbers is so critical, because to your point, if I could bring in a mobile home or manufactured home into one of my communities, but if I tried to sell it for 150, 160, $180,000 in a market that's selling stick built homes at $200,000, it's just, it's not, it's probably not going to be as effective, right?
Yeah.
I'm probably making my job a lot harder than it needs to be. Um, I, so do you look at what you're doing now, and are you do you look at it as being a spec builder, just with a manufactured product? Like, how do you view what you're doing now? I mean, because it sounds like you're doing a lot of spec building, right?
Yeah, essentially it is that. This is spec building without the building. I guess I'm specking. I don't know. It's definitely not. Yeah, it's definitely
You're
not
not
flipping.
you're spec building without the labor. That's
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it effectively is spec builds for mobile homes.
so I mean, and how do you mentioned you've done quite a number of them in the last few years, right? And that velocity of that pace, like, are you looking at it site specific? Are you looking at building out communities for that? Or are you just looking, opportunistically where, hey, I'm in the path of progress. I know I've got utilities, right? Water or sewer or whatever the case may be running in this lane. So this would be a good spot to do that. Like, how are you identifying the land? Like, what's triggering, your action and your activity?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, we want to make sure that we can get a sales price of at least 220 minimum. So over time, we've expanded into different markets, and that's the first thing that we're going to look at is, are used mobile homes selling for over 220, 230? The house that we're using We're using the same one every single time. It's just under 1,700 square feet. So we want to look for comps that are similar square footage. If you can't get 220, 230 for the house, then you need to be getting the land for like 10 grand. Those ones that we did in Gaffney, for example, we got that for 7 grand a lot. We sold them for 185. And we did okay. I think we made, I don't know, 25, 30 grand on each one. But what we learned is that you really need to get a slightly higher sales price because it's not very often that you're going to get a lot for $7,000. So that's the first thing that we're looking at. Second thing that we're looking at is utility access. We don't mind septic tanks. That's probably 95% of the deals that we do. We're installing a septic tank, but water access is huge. Depending on where you are in the country, to dig a well is extremely expensive. For context, in our market, we're quoted about $18,000 to $20,000 to do a well, and so that'll quickly blow up the numbers of a deal. So, biggest thing is public water access for us. Next thing is topography. What I love about this model is it's the same thing every single time. The house is already built in a factory. There's no real surprises. You're clearing and grading the lot. It's the same process, same house every single time. Where you're most of your costs are fixed. What I pay for a house in Greenville County is the same that I pay for a house here in Charlotte. Maybe there's a variation of $1,000 or something due to freight charges, but all the costs are pretty much the same and all of your costs are fixed. Where there's a big discrepancy in cost is going to be A, utilities, which is like a well that I mentioned, or B, it's going to be in the topography of the lot. How much clearing and grading you need to do? Do you need to bring in a lot of fill dirt and all of that? So the next thing that we're looking at is topography. We've gotten burned on a couple of these deals, and that's mainly due to them being down in like a hole. So you don't want a lot that's very sloped because no one wants to live down in a hole. And so you're gonna struggle to sell that. The other thing that we've gotten burned on is being on a main road. So you don't want to be on a 2-lane highway or something. We'll still occasionally do deals like that, just depending on how busy the road is. But when we see that it's on a main road, the first thing we're going to do is get on Google Street View. If we're not driving to it in person, we're going to get on Google Street View and kind of drive down that main road a little bit and just kind of look around, see how many cars are there. If you're only seeing one or two on that Google Street View as you're going around, then you can say, well, it's a double line road, but it's really not that busy. And we're okay with that. But we've been burned on that too. So those are the main things: utilities, topography, area, call it, and being on a main road.
You know, the advantage to this too, right, is number one, once you order the home, right, and the home might take 6 to 8 weeks to get delivered, right? The setup, once it's on the ground, right, and you're using the same thing, so you're probably prepping the lot before it gets there, right? And then once the home is landed, from landed to a final approval, how long does that take you?
Yeah, so if we buy a piece of land today, we're on the market within 45 days to 60 days.
Yes.
So once the house is on site, maybe 30 days or less, and we're up and ready to go.
So that time is money, right? So you're ordering the home. If you're building a stick-built home, it could take you anywhere from 3 to 6 months. I mean, in New York City, it could take you a year from the time you start construction to getting that final certificate of occupancy where you can have somebody move in. Here, the time is a lot faster, and I'm going to say this, and I'm sure you're probably doing this, but a lot of times, if you're a dealer, whether it's the factory or whether you have credit lines with some of the different lenders, you can buy this house, right, essentially on credit, right? So the house is coming in. Like when we bring in homes, we're not buying it cash because we have our dealer's license in multiple states. The house is being financed, right? It's on our line. It's on our spec line, right? So it comes in, and now, yes, there's a finance cost to it, but if you were doing a stick-built home, and you wanted to go get a bank loan, it's a process. It comes out in drawers. You have to put money up front. Here, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. You're buying the land, which you probably have to buy cash. The setup cost that you're gonna have to pay, but the home, which is the largest cost, I got to imagine you're probably financing that, right?
We're financing everything 100%. The
beautiful.
land, it's set up, and house.
And that really, can accelerate your return on that. Have you thought, and I mentioned this because we looked at this at, you know one of our projects, maybe some out parcels. The modular homes, they they did just a recent changing the law. If there's no other modular homes nearby, they have to uh, appraise against the stick built, right? Have you considered bringing some modular homes in and taking a look at that? Maybe that as an option.
Yeah, absolutely. We looked at that several years ago because, like you're saying, yes, they do get appraised based on stick-built homes. And the other thing about it is zoning. A lot of zoning, as you know, will prevent mobile homes. And so, being able to do modular opens up the opportunity to do a lot of deals that you couldn't do otherwise due to zoning. Uh, when we explored that, what we found in our market, at least, the setup cost for modular just blew the numbers out of the water. This was several years ago, so don't fully quote me on this, but I believe our setup cost was somewhere in the neighborhood of
Mm.
$50,000 for a modular, and then of course you got to pour a slab and all of that to set the home on, and so we just couldn't make the numbers work uh, by doing modular, and that's our market where maybe if you're somewhere that has a higher sales price, it works.
Got it.
But for setup, they got to bring a crane out there and all that. It's a lot more involved than installing a mobile home. So we've just chosen to stay away from it.
Got it. Okay. So now, where are you guys at? Because what I love about this is this. Look, we have an affordability housing crisis in this country, right? And so the different options that we could do to address that, I think they all it's it helps solve the issue, right? Whatever we can do to make things, easier for people, create a better pathway for people to become homeowners, one way or another, whether it's community living or finding or setting or detitling some of these manufactured homes with the land. I mean, these are all, solutions to it. So where are you guys up now, and where do you see the opportunity set for you guys going further?
Yeah. So right now we're doing, I don't know, 60 or so a year of these. And we take all of our money that we make from this and funnel it into mobile home parks. Um, Between Robert and I think we got 30 something mobile home parks. And I think I've actually started moving out of the mobile home park space personally. I don't like them as much as I once did. And I think that we're going to continue to just do land home packages and kind of ride this wave for as long as we can. Because, like I said, 3.5 years ago, I didn't know anyone doing this and I didn't know anyone talking about it. Now it seems like there's a lot more conversation around it. And, maybe there's only 3 to 5 years worth of runway on it before everyone and their mom's doing it. Who knows? But right now in this market, a lot of my friends that are flippers or spec builders, traditional spec builders, that is, are getting hammered. It's tough out there for them because they're all competing with each other when they go to sell at the $300,000-$400,000 price points in our market, at least. There's a lot more inventory there than there was 5 years ago, but at the sales price that we're at 230, there's virtually nothing.
Yeah,
Um,
flipping is hard. Like, people don't realize how
Very.
difficult to spec, to buy a house, to renovate it, to put it back on the market. It's very tough to scale that business because you open a wall and you just don't know what could be happening afterwards.
That's right.
So and your $20,000 budget could become 40,000 over, and you just have to do the work, right? Like, if there's no not doing the work
Yeah, that's right.
if it's opened up. Chris, this has been super helpful. Look, if anything, if anybody has any questions about land home packages, how would they find out more information about you, about what you're doing, or to find out information about that?
Yeah, I don't mind people reaching out to me directly. They can find me on Facebook. That's the main platform that I use. First name's Chris, last name's Gavre, Gav as in Victor, Re. I'm the only redheaded Chris Gavre you'll find on Facebook. So you can look me up, send me a message. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chris, man, this has been great. Thank you very much. Until the next time, everyone. This is Frank Rizzo with the Mobile Home Park Exchange. Happy investing.